Welcome to another episode of Success for the Athletic-Minded Man. Real talk on harnessing your athletic drive for clarity, consistency, and focus in business and life. This is your host, Jim Harshaw Jr. Today, I'm bringing you part two of a two-part series about Olympians. We're digging up some of these old interviews that I've done over the years. I'm at episode 467 that you're listening to right now, so it's mind-blowing how many conversations I've had with amazing people, and so many of these great conversations happened, some of them years ago, but there's transformative lessons in these that we want to share, especially heading into the Paris Olympics, which is when I'm recording this right now. In episode 465, you heard from some amazing Olympians. You heard their stories and some amazing lessons there. And today we're bringing you a new set of Olympians who I've spoken with and some lessons directly from them. All right, so today we're going to hear about three different lessons. And the lessons are this: transformative encounters that these individuals had with coaches and or mentors, like pivot points, like these interactions they had that were life-changing for them. And how, I want you to think about yourself as well. Like, who are you surrounding yourself? Who is in your corner? Who are the people that you're interacting with, that you want to interact with more, or maybe even less, right? So that's the first lesson. The second of three is about leveraging failure for success. And you're going to hear some incredible stories of failure and setback and adversity from these individuals. And then the third lesson is about redefining your personal identity after major life changes. And certainly you think about a major life change of an Olympian, retiring from sports, but you're also going to hear from John Register, who he was training as an Olympic hopeful and had a tragic accident where he had to have his leg amputated. And he became a Paralympian, and as a matter of fact, a Paralympic silver medalist. So let me tell you the names and a quick background on the different Olympians you're going to hear from today. The first one is Lindsay Shoup. She's an Olympic champion rower. Fantastic interview with Lindsay. She's a fellow UVA grad like me. Wahoo wah to Lindsay. The next is Matt Lindland. Matt is an Olympic silver medalist, wrestler, Greco-Roman wrestler. He was the national team coach, and we became friends over the years and had a great conversation with Matt. Leah Amico is another one, Olympic gold medalist softball player. Devin Harris was an Olympian in the bobsled. Actually, he was on the Jamaican bobsled team, the captain of the Jamaican bobsled team. Yes, there's a movie about that. There's a real person, a real people behind that, and Devin Harris was the captain of that team. Fascinating story, fascinating lessons. Also, Cameron Myler, who was an Olympian in the luge. I mentioned John Register, who is a Paralympic silver medalist, incredible guy, great friend. And lastly, Helen Maroulis, Olympic champion wrestler, first ever female Olympic gold medalist wrestler for the United States. Okay, so we've got three amazing sort of sets of lessons that you're going to hear from these different individuals. Let's go ahead and get into the first one. We're going to talk about transformative encounters with coaches and mentors. So here we go.
There's a chance encounter that you happen to have, I think the next day or very shortly after that, with Coach Kevin Sauer, the head rowing coach of Virginia, who's a good friend of mine. But the listener, I actually called Kevin prior to this interview. And Kevin told me, and you allude to this in the book, Lindsay, that he learned about you because your mom is a hygienist and your mom is Kevin's hygienist. And Kevin learned about you when you were in high school, and he came and watched you in some of your sports. And he really was like even recruiting you into rowing then. And so this was kind of on your radar. And for the listener, I just want you to think like, but Lindsay, I don't want you to think this. I don't want you to think, Lindsay had this chance encounter, and, what if that chance encounter never happens for me? The chance encounter only happened because you were open to it. Like, you had that chance encounter before, but you were open to it at this moment. And so you bump into Coach Kevin Sauer at the swimming facility.
Yeah, at the school gym, and he and I both had the gumption at this point, because when there's a swim meet, first of all, he went there to, look around, I'm sure, because he's always looking for opportunity. He loves the sport of rowing. He loves how life-changing it can be. He loves the life lessons that it can teach. And so he's always looking to share that with people. And I'm sure that's what he was doing there at the swim meet. Like, hey, when you're done with swim season, I could picture him having this conversation. But he and I had both had the gumption at this point. They had the pool itself blocked off from the rest of the gym, including the bathrooms, by these like white temporary fence things that they install, whenever you have events. I'm sure you've seen them if you've ever been to an event. They're about waist high. I hop over it to go use the restroom. He had done the same thing. We were both clearly in a place that we shouldn't have been, and we were the only two people around. And he stopped me. I was on my way out. He was on his way in. And he stopped me and said hello. And the thing is, he could have just walked on by and been like, that's that kid that I've tried to get to row. And no, that's just not him. He's like, Dad Nabbit, I'm going to keep asking, because this is really meaningful. And maybe she'll say yes this time, and I hadn't seen him in a while, at least 2 or 2.5 years. I don't recall him talking to me for 2 or 2.5 years. I actually found letters from Virginia Rowing unopened under my bed at my parents' house years later. So apparently they had sent mail along the way. That's how turned off to it. And the fact that I don't remember that happening just goes to show how closed off to that opportunity I was at the time.
Yeah, the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Yeah. First thing he said was, hey, Lindsay, it's never too late to row. And I was just like, I'd really like that. And I think he was shocked that I said that. And he pulled out this like wrinkled business card, like he had been sitting on it in his wallet as if he had put it in there 2.5 years prior, just for me. I had saved it that long. Gives it to me, said, hey, give me a call. At this point, I could have still just been like, oh, and not followed up on that. So there was still room for me to be closed off to this opportunity. The ball was still in my court. So I had to still do something to pursue that opportunity. I had to reach out and call him, and I called him up. And in that moment, in that meeting, he told me that I would actually be meeting with a different coach, the novice coach, who would coach people that had never rowed in college and potentially never rowed before. But she was unavailable when I was available. So he went out of his way as the head coach of one of the top 4 or 5 women's rowing programs in the country, in the history of women's NCAA rowing, right? This person went out of his way to meet with me, to show me around, to make sure that I really wanted to be a part of the team. So I did. Like, he took time out of his day to come and meet with me.
One of my trainers, she was on an 80 Olympic team. She didn't actually get to go compete because those games were boycotted. But, so I was inspired about the Olympics early, but it was in a completely different sport. And by the time I got to the top in my state, I wanted to go to the regionals and then hopefully move on to the nationals. And my mother and father said, that sport's a little too expensive. You're going to have to find something else to do. And, you can still ride for fun, but we cannot afford to actually send you all over the country to compete at that level.
So that's how you got your start in wrestling, right?
Well, high school gym class, our gym coach was the former wrestling coach, so he always had coincidentally like a 6-week section of wrestling before the season started. So basically, you'd roll right from this PE class right into your wrestling season, and it was just kind of their recruiting effort. They're like, "Hey, man, you're pretty good at this. You should try out." And I tried out, and I made the team at 98 pounds as a freshman.
Huh. So that was your first year wrestling as a freshman in high school?
Yeah, my freshman year of high school, and I had some really good assistant coaches there that helped me along the way. And throughout all my career, I've had just amazing coaches. Everywhere I've gone, I've gotten blessed with really good coaching. But I had one coach in high school that I wouldn't say was a stellar coach, but he did one thing for me. Was he handed me the flyer about Roman Greco and freestyle and said, "Hey, if you guys want to do this, the season's over. I'm out, but here's the information." So he gave us this flyer about the state freestyle, and as I found out, it was actually Greco-Roman. But he sent me this flyer, and I went 0-8 that weekend at the state tournament. I wrestled both cadets and junior level, didn't win a single match, and the next Monday I showed up at the club where most of the kids that were on the podium came from, and that's kind of where I finished. I started my wrestling career. Really was at a club in Oregon. That's Mark Sprague was our head coach there, and The club was it was USA Oregon or Cobra Club back then.
When I was at University of Arizona, we won 3 national championships. We were one of the few collegiate softball teams in the entire country who had a sports psychologist. Jeff Jansen was his name. And I'm going to tell you right now,
Jeff's been on the podcast.
oh, awesome. Yes. No, it was huge to have that. I'll tell you about Coach Candrea, who I played for at Arizona, was very big on giving access to all these people in their different areas and fields that were authority figures and the experts. And he would be like, okay, work with my team. I want everything available. And so the mindset, the unity, the team building that we did. So on Team USA, same thing. And the more freedom our head coach gave to these sports psychologists, I really believe the more it impacted us as athletes, and we were able to draw from them what we needed.
All right, we talked about these transformative encounters with other people, with these coaches and mentors. Let's now talk about leveraging failure and setback for success.
This idea of dreaming big, I describe myself as fiercely ambitious. And I just think that if there is this thing out there that Jim has done, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that looks good. Why can't I do it too? And I want to do it because in my head, it's going to make my life better. But it also, and every dreamer experiences this, right? It also opens you up to failure. There's a good chance that you might fail, right? So we talk about, and I know your program talks about failing and how you succeed from that. And so let's talk about Sandhurst for a minute, because when I went to Sandhurst, my goal wasn't to graduate. That was a given. My goal was to win the award as a top overseas student. I never did. I failed. I was young and foolish, and I jumped from a plane and I broke my ankle. And that essentially took me out of the running. Even though I was being considered at near the end there, I didn't feel like I deserved it, to be honest. But to me, that was a massive failure, man, because that was my one and primary focus, to be named the top overseas student. It never happened, but the second prize was that I became an Army officer.
Yeah. Do you think you got further because you dreamed big, even though you failed at that one in particular?
I have failed, a number of times before that, but I just think that for me, failure makes me more determined to work and to succeed. And so, whether it was that failure or, prior failures, we have to do these exams in Jamaica to go from elementary school to high school. Though the first time I did the exam, I failed, and I'm disappointed because we all will be not discouraged. All I did was just work harder. I worked harder. I passed next time. I went to a pretty good high school in Kingston. So, all of us, I think, all dreamers, anyone who has succeeded along the way, it's impossible for them to have achieved success without having to deal with some failures along the way. And the ones that bounce back and keep on pushing, as I like to say, are the ones who go, okay, fine. It didn't work out this time, but I'm going after it again. And in fact, I'm going to go after this other even bigger goal out there. Let's see how it works.
My last year was 97, 98, and that culminated with the Olympics in Japan. I was going into the last World Cup race. I was second in the overall standings for the World Cup. The final race was on a track in Altenburg, Germany, which it's about as far east in Germany as you can get. So it was in the former East Germany, and I raced there when it was still communist East Germany. And I'd won on that track. I was the first non-German to beat all of the Germans on that track. So I loved it. It was tough. It was a really fast and difficult run. But that year, the Germans decided that, and I'll also mention that it was a track when it was built, it was decided that it was too fast. So the men, who normally go from one start, and then the women in doubles go from another start, usually like 2 curves down the track. They moved the starts down. So the men were racing from the women's and doubles starts, and the women in doubles went from the junior start. However, that year, the Germans said, okay, we're going to put everyone back up to we're going to have everyone go up to the original starts, except no one other than the Germans had training from those
Oh, wow.
starts. Yeah, so it was not particularly fair in all of our opinions. And I was the kind of athlete where I crashed like once a year. I would say one of my faults as an athlete was I probably thought a little bit too much, and I wanted to be a little too much in control. So I, on the last run from the old women's start, I crashed, and it happens, but I couldn't figure out why I crashed. And then I had to move up to the men's start. And then you're going 20 miles an hour faster. Everything comes a lot more quickly, and your timing has to be, like right on. So I actually crashed then 2 more times in the next 2 days. So I crashed 3 times. It was really painful, and I was afraid. I thought, oh my gosh, like I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know how to fix it. I know that when I crash, it's really painful. And the last time that I crashed, my sled got away from me, and you try to hang on to your sled because if you crash and the sled gets away on its own, it might get damaged, and they're really difficult to fix. And it's a very, highly technical piece of equipment. So I slid on my backside about 3 curves, stopped right in front of my coach. And I said, that's it. Like, I'm not going to go. And he said, and he's from Liechtenstein. He said, yeah, but you must go. And I was like, yeah, okay. You can go get on my sled. I don't want to go. And I didn't. And I had never experienced that before in my whole luge career. And the other sort of complicating factor was that year, the Germans had also changed the rules, and you could not drop your worst World Cup race from the total results. So I had to race. I was second overall. I had to race. I had no confidence in myself. I was afraid to get on the sled, and it was one of the most difficult things I've done. But I sort of had to dig down pretty deep and remember okay, I've won on this track. I know this track. This is really more an issue of having faith in myself and believing that I can do it, which I did. I got on the sled. I didn't win. I was 5th in the race. I didn't win a medal, but I stayed in the top 3 overall. So it was really difficult because that was like fear of physically injuring yourself. But I think it requires you to have some faith in yourself and in your abilities. And I think that applies whether, you're talking about sport or, as you said, public speaking or, or whatever it is in the business context. Faith in yourself is hugely important.
All right, the third and final topic is about redefining your personal identity after major life changes. For you, that might be a career change that you have made or that you may want to make. And so we're going to hear from a couple of amazing Olympians here.
Life can change with one wrong step, and life can get back on track with one right step as well. But on May 17th, 1994 at 5:30 in the afternoon, I misstepped a hurdle in the 400-meter hurdles, landed awkwardly, dislocated my left knee, severed the artery behind my kneecap, and 7 days later had the choice to make: either keep my leg and use a walker or a wheelchair for the rest of my life, or undergo an amputation and use a prosthesis for the rest of my life. What kind of choice is that? So we see things that happen in our lives that instantly will change, instantly will shift us. We might look at it in today's terminologies of COVID, right? I say everybody that went through COVID last year and through this year went through an amputation. It was literally the world stopped, and we didn't have control over it any longer. We thought what we had control over, we no longer did. We said things like, these are now uncertain times. And my challenge back to individuals and the groups I speak with are, when do we ever have certainty? We never really had it. We had rituals, we had rhythms that we put in place that elevated us to a rise and create a result, but we never knew what was going to happen the next day. We never knew what happens in the future. Anything can change. And are we prepared for that? So when I had that injury on that day and in the hospital and the doctors there giving me this choice, I really wanted to get rid of the pain, right? It was the pain was so great that if I could just get rid of the leg, I'll get rid of this pain. But when I talked to Dr. Mullins and I said, just take it off, it was really because that's what my male deductive reasoning had said. But when I woke up, I was in more pain than my male deductive reasoning had actually reasoned. And that's kind of the whole kind of injury process of what I think we all go through this point of recognition that something will not be the same any longer. And of course, doing an amputation, that's a permanent choice.
I had just come on national team. I just made the world team in 2011. I'd qualified the weight for the Olympics by taking fifth at the world championships, and I had won the national, so I was already in the finals of Olympic trials. So all I had to do was win 2 matches, and I was going to be on the Olympic team.
2 out of 3, right?
Yeah, 2 out of 3. And so that was, my dream. And I actually thought I was going to wrestle someone else. The top 2 girls missed weight. And so the person I ended up wrestling, I was confident, and I was like, okay, I'm going to win. So there wasn't anything where I didn't believe I was going to win. I mean, I really did, and I lost. And I was really so devastated. I remember, and let me just put it into perspective, if the worst thing that happens in your life is losing the Olympic trials, like, that's not that bad. But I didn't realize how much I made it a part of my identity, and how much I think I felt that once I make this Olympic team, I'll be worthy, or I'll be, somebody. Like, I just didn't, I was confident about my wrestling, but I wasn't confident about myself as a person. And I don't think there was a lot of self-love. And I don't know if those were the direct things that affected I don't know. I think loss is mind, body, soul. So there's wrestling things that I needed to fix, and there's mental things, and there were, soul things that I needed to fix. But I've said before, like, when you give 100% and you lose, you just have to own the fact that you weren't good enough, or whatever. And I was very negative at that time. So I thought, it's just not a good place for me to be. And I was depressed for months. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to wrestle. And so I just remember, I'm done with wrestling. Like, I'm retiring. This doesn't make me happy anymore. I'm tired of riding the highs of winning and the lows of losing. Like, I can't be on this roller coaster anymore. This doesn't give me joy. And so when I felt like God was like, hey, come back and do it my way, I didn't say yes because it was this exchange where if I do it your way, you'll win the Olympics. I didn't really think I was going to win the Olympics at any point. Was I like super sure? It was more just, God, I'm going to do this. I'm giving this 4 more years. You have 4 years. Whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. Whatever you want me to do, whatever you want me to change about myself as a person, I'm giving you 4 years because I just don't want to have regret. Like, literally, I was so broken. I'm like, 4 more years, because I know if I just give everything 4 more years, I can just live the rest of my life in peace. I just don't want to look back and have regret. So, there were a lot of times through those 4 years where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I think I might be able to win the Olympics. Or like, hey, you know what? Like, I won worlds. If I just keep going, don't stop now, keep pushing. Like, I can win next year. And yeah, Yoshida, she's almost unbeatable, but anything's possible. And so it was never this total assurance, but there were times where I got more excited and had more belief in myself. But by a month before Olympics, the 2016 Olympics, I actually was going to quit because I thought I wasn't going to make weight. And I had been working with a nutritionist, with a doctor. It was really hard for me to go from 65 kilos to 53 kilos. And I was trying to do it in the healthiest way possible. I was monitoring every single, down to the T, 24 hours a day was just monitored. And it took a lot of discipline. And we were at a camp in Spain, and there, 7 out of my 16 competitors were there. Not only was I 7 kilos heavier than everyone, but everyone beat me. And I just remember walking home back to the hotel from practice every day, bawling, uncontrollably on the streets, no shame, just bawling. And I was like, God, you brought me this far. And
shortly before the Olympics, you say?
Yeah, this is 4 weeks before the Olympics.
Wow.
And I'm crying. And, coach is like, all right, well, let's just go walk a couple extra miles a day, put in some extra runs, eat a little bit less. No matter what we tried, nothing was working. And I got back to Colorado, and I was like, look, I got to go see my parents for a couple days. And I went home, and when I came back, I just remember I was journaling, and I was like, all right, God, if I could ask you for anything right now, I would ask you to just please let me start losing weight. And just please let me just know that I can make this weight class. It's so selfish to miss weight, and there's girls behind me that can wrestle and they can make weight. And I don't want to go and not to me, it's I can't, that will devastate me. So I was like, please, if I just lose some kilos, please help me out, and then I'll be happy. And he's like, okay, well, if I give you that, what will you ask for next? And I'm like, well, if I lose weight, then I'm probably going to ask for my, for my training to be ready. He's like, okay, and if I give you that, then what? And I'm like, well, if my training's ready and my weight's good, then I'm going to ask for, I want the tournament to come already. but the tournament can't come already, so I'm going to ask for, just keep me relaxed while I'm waiting. And then when the tournament comes, because everything was going right, I'm going to want to win and ask for that. And then after that, I'm going to ask for a break and vacation. And then when I'm on vacation, I'm going to miss wrestling and I'm going to ask to come back. And so he kind of just showed me that you'll be on this cycle of constantly asking for things, or you keep thinking that when this changes, this will get better. And he's like, I just need you to pause and be grateful and be in the moment. And so I would just journal. I would wake up an hour early every day, and I was like, I can't control how the weight's going. I'm doing everything that I'm told. I'm doing everything right. But obviously I can't force it to go down at this point. And I'm like, but I can control this first hour of my day. And I'm going to choose joy, and I'm going to choose gratitude, and I'm going to choose to just be in a good place. And so I did that every day through and past the Olympics. But by the time the Olympics came around, in those 3 weeks, it was kind of life altering, because I would read my journal and I was like, man, God, I thought that I always wanted this gold medal, but I already got everything that I wanted out of this. Like, I'm no different than the person that took silver. We both get the same things out of this sport. And I got the perseverance, and I got the work ethic, and I got the lessons from going through these challenges, and all these things that I'm going to use in my life, I already have. And so I didn't need to win at that point. It was more like, I'm just doing it to enjoy it.
These were amazing interviews, amazing conversations. I hope you go back and check out some of those actual episodes. We'll have the list of what episodes I interviewed each of these Olympians. We're going to have that list in the action plan. So make sure you grab the action plan, go to jimharshawjr.com/action. And I hope this brings these individuals down to earth. These are real people who had real struggles and real setbacks and real life experience, that, just like you had and just like I've had. And they have achieved incredible things, and so can you. Figure out what your action items are from this episode. What are you going to do differently? What are you going to start doing, stop doing, or continue doing because of what you learned here today? So take action. Good luck.